it's interesting to see what has happened in the last 7 years, the role of procurement within the range of African development. This title, obviously called From the Back Room to the Boardroom. Some people call it From the Back Room to the Bedroom. We are not going to share more light on from the bedroom aspects. For me, it's about the boardroom. And the reason why I chose this as a title for this presentation is because of the changing dynamics for procurement professionals. And I will share with you the statistics within the last 7 years and why CEOs are obviously crying and desperately looking for procurement professionals to be part of the boardroom. Now, the objectives of the presentations obviously is to try and share with you what has been happening between procurement, operations management, supply chain, and logistics within the last 7 years. I've been doing this work at my own expense because of my passionate belief that procurement has a key role to play in the development of Africa. Colleagues, I always highlight the issue of economic growth and economic development. There's a subtle difference. When you export your raw materials, you can achieve fantastic economic growth numbers, but not necessarily development. Economic development in Africa is happening at a very slow pace because of the lack of strategic input from all of us in this room, procurement. Hence, between 2009 and now, there's been a sudden shift. We are being recognized. The question is, are we ready to make that giant leap? I have been doing this research and find out what has been happening within supply chain management since 2009. In 2009, I did report that procurement had image problems. As soon as you go around or you meet any professional in finance, in law, in marketing, you mention that you are a procurement professional, what comes to mind is that you are corrupt. I reported on that in 2009 at the Smart Procurement Conference, that this image problem has been created by ourselves, and we need to find a way of changing that. In 2011, the same challenges were faced by the procurement profession. So, in partnership with SIPS, I decided to try and get into the boardrooms of the CEO. Now, I successfully did that. And they were putting the blame on us in terms of why we are not seen as being serious or being strategic enough to be invited into the boardroom. And then an article came out on that and provided some insights as to what we need to do. Some of us are very still too operational in our mindset. CEOs obviously have a strategic mindset. They want value from us. But they did complain that we were not what I would call strategic enough to be invited into the boardroom. And these are some of the challenges that we are still facing today. In 2012 and 13, I decided to extend this research to find out what can be done, for procurement to be invited into the boardroom. It was very interesting, the sudden shift. And the sudden shift has been triggered by the global recession and how governments and CEOs are now seeing procurement as a strategic lever for local development. When you are buying, you need to strategically source. When you strategically source, you are able to create jobs. The notion of proudly South African, proudly Kenya, proudly Ghana is all about sourcing. Sourcing to create local jobs. Local content starts with procurement. Now, the sudden shift to procurement is because even logistics, you procure that service. Am I right, colleagues? You procure that service. That is why procurement is now back on the strategic agenda. The unfortunate thing is, in Africa, we don't procure. We don't strategically source. We just buy. And that's the reason why we have a lot of issues in terms of job creation, and supplier and enterprise development. Now, the research that I've done, colleagues, is not academic research. It's a quasi-industrial and academic research with relevance to industry. That is why right now I'm spending a lot of time traveling around the continent, talking to governments, talking to CEOs about the need for the elevation of procurement and supply chain to the boardroom. And they are listening. Within the next couple of years, you will see a lot of us, those that are strategic and directional, making their way into the boardroom. Now, the sample size of, I'm going to run through this quickly because of the time constraint. The sample size of the research is quite significant because there were quite a few CEOs, decision makers. Some of the CEOs that participated, their revenues is bigger than the GDP of South Africa. You can guess yourself, that company. There were petrochemical companies, there were some educational establishments, there were logistics companies, there were retail companies, food and beverage. And these are all very high-level people. Now, the sectors that I looked at, manufacturing was part of it, mining and resources, food and beverage, government and SOEs, because government and SOEs in Africa is a big chunk of our economic activity, and then the logistics and supply chain fraternity. Now, you see that there was some education establishments and also ICT. I see one or two of the ICT companies having their stand here. Now, the profiles I mentioned to you that there were quite a few CEOs and also CFOs. CFOs, in most cases, control procurement, which I will share with you that right now they are even thinking that is a conflict of interest, and they want to let it go, which is good news. And then chief operations officers, which unfortunately right now, because of the rise in the chief supply chain management officer position, the COO title is beginning to disappear. I shared with you in terms of the profiles. You had the chief supply chain officer, you also had chief procurement officers. There's a bit of a debate as to which is going to make it into the C-suite by 2020. And I will share with you the numbers. And then manufacturing directors, and then the CIOs. Most of these executives were either members of the Institute of Operations Management, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, the new name for SIPS. The Institute of Directors, both in South Africa and also in the UK and in the United States, and then the Chartered Management Institute. Now, these are some of the questions that were posed to the executives. Which aspect of supply chain function is critical for organizational bottom line performance? Colleagues, you see the interesting figures. In 2009, 19.1% thought it was procurement. Look at the response in 2013. The response in 2013 is 32% of these executives believe that procurement has a critical role to play in organizational bottom line performance, which is good news because everything starts with procurement. They are beginning to see the light. In 2009, logistics was 23.4%. Now it has dropped to 18%. The CEOs are beginning to realize that even for procurement, even for logistics, you have to procure it. So everything starts with procurement, your function. In 2009, operations was key. 31%. It's now down to 22%. Procurement is being seen as strategic with these numbers. Now, the next question I pose to these executives: which of these have impact on government service delivery? We all know what is happening with the challenges government is facing with service delivery. See where procurement is. 26% of these executives, some of which, by the way, let me qualify, ministers, DGs, and private sector executives, they were saying procurement was one of the key things that affect government service delivery. And then, surprisingly, they linked procurement to supply chain management. 34%. In 2009, only 17% were of the view that supply chain management affected government service delivery. Today is 34%. They are now beginning to understand what supply chain management can do to their businesses, to economic development, and also to the NDP. This evening, I am on SABC talking about the link between supply chain management and the NDP. The government wants to know more and is looking at us to assist. The next question. This is to do with the NDP. Which of the following has direct impact on industrialization and economic development? Not economic growth. We can still ship out our coal, our gold, our platinum. I'm not interested in that. I want the value addition to be done locally, because that is how you create the jobs. And that's where supply chain comes in. 36% in 2013 believe that procurement has a key role. You know, colleagues, when you talk about the issue of enterprise development, supply development, it all starts with procurement, not in finance. Procurement is the trigger for these things. That is why there's a challenge with broad-based black economic empowerment. Now, in 2009, the governments and the CEOs globally, they were of the view that 23.4% of these respondents believed that supply chain management had a key role to play. Now look at 2013. It's jumped to 38%, with procurement as one of the key levers. 30%. In 2009, it was 19%. So you see how there's been a sudden shift in mindset changes, which obviously is positive news for all of us in this room. But are we ready to rise up to the challenge? Now, through engagements, I have been having a lot of discussions. And you know, I always say that for us to be able to industrialize, we need to be able to produce our own underwear. Now, today I can confidently say in this room that let me qualify this, 99.99% of you all here wearing an underpants is not made in Africa. Your underwear comes from either India, China, Bangladesh. In 2001, I could easily walk into Woolworths in South Africa and buy made in South Africa. Today, it's gone. It's because we just buy. We don't strategically source. Now, when we buy, you have this short-term gain, long-term pain syndrome. It's because you are just looking at price. The socks, the belt, the shirts that we wear is all gone. Now you wonder why the Cape Town textile industry collapsed. It's all to do with procurement. And the CEOs are now seeing this. And you know what? They are not taking the blame for it. When I spoke to them, you know what they said? It's procurement. You told us. Finance is not taking the blame. Finance is balancing the books. They are blaming procurement for this. So, whatever you are doing in terms of procurement, you have a direct impact on what is happening in South Africa and the rest of the continent. I spend my time going around to check what is happening within the shops. Last year, I looked at what is happening with the rubber industry, and in particular condoms. Condoms used to be manufactured in South Africa. Now it's coming from Manchester. How do you create jobs if your condoms are coming from Manchester? This is all procurement, making those decisions for their various institutions, be it government or private sector institutions. What about small business development? The question was posed. Procurement again featured very highly. 28% in 2013 believed procurement has a direct impact, which is true. Because we are the trigger. You are supposed to be the custodians of developing BEEs, and they need to source from your businesses. Unless procurement has a direct influence on this, it's not going to happen. We can't do things from a financial perspective all the time. See supply chain management, how it featured. In 2009, it was 24%. Today, 36% of decision makers that took part in this survey, CEOs, technical directors, financial managers, and directors, all believe that supply chain management has a key role to play, which opens a lot of opportunities for yourselves. Now, today, C-suite members are beginning to see the light, as I keep saying. They want to listen to us. They are prepared to open the door for us to come in and share our ideas. We have to be strategic and provide them with value addition in the boardroom. I went to the shop. I'm not going to mention the name of the shop. And I saw organic carrot juice from Switzerland. And I was asking myself, a procurement professional has made that decision to buy organic carrot juice from Switzerland. Africa has the richest soil and land mass for agriculture in the world. How big is Switzerland? We are encouraging job creation outside. Why can't we get our rural mothers and fathers to produce organically and get it converted, and then it ends in the shop? Of course, in the short term, colleagues, there's a price to pay. But in the long term, with economies of scale, the price will drop. We're not doing that as procurement professionals. We always look at price. Even when it comes to the tender process, price is a key qualifying factor. How does SMMEs obviously compete? I've seen bacon from Denmark in the shops. In 2000, it was 99.99% made in South Africa. Right now, bacon is coming from Denmark. There is chicken from Brazil, poultry industry. Minister Davis tried to put a stop to it, which I applaud him for that, because at the end of the day, the poultry industry would have just collapsed. And you know what the CEOs are saying? It is us, because we advise them to go and buy. I am not against globalization. But what I'm saying is we need to be strategically smart and source things that will help to create jobs. We are part of a borderless world. And this is where procurement and supply chain, we play a key role. Another question which I asked my CEO and ministerial colleagues, why was SEM elevated to the ESCO? Quite a few of them said it was a strategic business need. They've seen the light. You are no longer paper pushers, colleagues. They are seeing you as adding value. Now, the interesting thing is that the non-executive board, because of corporate social responsibility and what is called impact sourcing, they are putting pressure on ESCO to look at their procurement aspects of supply chain management. Hence, they are looking to all of us in this room. Most CEOs that are going to elevate supply chain to the boardroom believe that whoever is coming in there needs to have procurement skills. Not purchasing skills or buying skills. There's a difference. Procurement. When you are called a purchasing officer, you are basically a paper pusher. You shovel papers around. When you become procurement, then you are elevated to becoming more tactical and strategic. When you become supply chain, then you become responsible for the entire value chain. You are replacing the chief operating officer. Now, when you become the chief supply chain management officer, colleagues, the next step is obviously the CEO. That is why you see a lot of CEOs now having supply chain management backgrounds. This presents an opportunity for yourselves. Does it apply in the education sector? Of course. I know most of you don't report to the vice chancellors or the dean of the various business schools. I know you are very low in the hierarchy, but we can rise up if we become strategic enough. Because even within the education sector, there's massive spend. And universities are looking at leveraging that spend for both bottom line performance and for societal good. Other responses from these policy and CEOs: industrialization was key, local content development, local supply development, it's a government imperative, and social responsibility. And they are looking to drive all this from procurement and supply chain. They didn't say from logistics and supply chain, they said procurement. The procurement aspects of supply chain management has a key role to play in all these areas. Now, the interesting thing, which of the following will be the standard title? Because of what happened, I did write an article on this in 2009. Because every Tom, Dick, and Harry decided to call him or herself a chief procurement officer, it did confuse the C-suite members. So right now, they are more comfortable with the chief supply chain manager officer title because they believe that is the right ESCO title for people with procurement skills. In 2009, it was only 19.1% that believed that. In 2013, 48% of these high-powered executives believe that the chief supply chain management officer will become like the chief financial officer, same level. With the CIO, chief information officer, and even with the chief marketing officer. You can read this in 2011. I think it was McKinsey that predicted that. This is real. It's happening. Now, how do you take or grab that opportunity, colleagues? It's there for you to take. What are the critical skill requirements? This is the key thing that we all need to do some serious introspection and decide what is it that we want. You need to have a strategic and global outlook if you want to go up there. Yes, there are some of us that don't want to. It's fine. You want to be a manager. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be a director, you need to be global and strategic in your thinking. There is a difference between being a manager and being a director. Director, you direct. A manager, you manage. Very operational. In a lot of cases, unfortunately, for even procurement managers, you don't manage, you paper push. Because decisions are taken for you and you just have to, shuffle and push the paper around. Those things are changing, and it's up to us to grab that opportunity. You need to understand what corporate governance is. I always say procurement people are not corrupt. I always say it's the system and processes that are corruptive. I'll give you a classic example. You are tasked with basically having to create the future black industrialists, the future black millionaires. Now, they give you a budget of 35 billion. You are supposed to be using this money to help to create. But then again, your salary is less than 1.4 million. And I keep telling that we need to be bold and do some serious introspection. You got to pay people well. You pay them and incentivize them, they do the right thing. Now, when somebody comes to you, you've been to university, you've done everything that you have to do. You know this person doesn't know what he or she is talking about, but you are supposed to give a contract of 200 million. When at the end of the month or the year, the 1.5 is even tax, you end up with less than a million. Too much temptation. When I say this, they tell me, you have the option to leave. Leave and go where? There are no jobs. When I see, everybody talks about when you are stopped by you know who, they want money for coke. How much do they earn every month? We need to be bold. The government established the office of the Chief Procurement Officer. The level is not even a DG. And I'm saying this is wrong. Procurement is too strategically important for South Africa's development. It needs to be at least a DG level position so that he can represent his views directly to the minister. Now, when you are doing procurement, you are doing trading. Buying and selling is trading. Now, because Africa, we just we just adopted the European model, it needs to sit under treasury. Why is procurement under treasury? It becomes a number crunching exercise. When there is trade, when you are trading, you are buying, procuring and selling. It should be together. There has to be a super ministry. In most African countries, and even in Europe and the US, where procurement has sat under finance, there's been serious challenges. Today, the financial people are saying it's a conflict of interest. Now, government needs to be bold. It's taking the right step. It needs to be bold and say, procurement is part of trade and industry. Because you are buying and selling. When they're in the same room, they could be discussing the issues that help with local economic development. In a rush to obviously try as much as possible to pacify the electorate, the government announced we are creating a small business ministry. You will create complications within the supply chain. Small business development, procurement, buying and selling, they are all linked. It should be under trade. Because when the three sit in a room, they can come up with a plan. But when you have different ministries dealing with small business and enterprise development, what happens is you create another complex entity within the value chain, and it makes decision-making even longer. We've got to be bold. That is why I'm taking my message. Not just in South Africa, I've taken it to the AU, I've taken it to most countries in Africa, that we need to do this. And for me, it's not about doing it for today, it's for the African child. Because I think we are all, as procurement professionals, duty-bound to create a better future for the African child. Not for 2020. I'm thinking about 2057. I might be dead and gone. But the future generations will benefit. You see this, colleagues, I told you. Being finance and also controlling procurement creates a conflict of interest. You see? They are now saying it's wrong. This is where all the problems are coming from. The adoption, not the adaptation of world-class practices. We tend to just take and try and implement. Developing world issues are different from the developed world. I give you another example. We all use systems. And I know in a lot of institutions, the systems are not doing what they are supposed to do. Systems are just enablers. Garbage in, garbage out. Now we rush to buy without thinking about the implications. Systems is good, you need it for information, but you need to know what you want and why you are buying something and the implications. Now, colleagues, what are the potential implications? For me, it's good news. We are definitely now on the strategic agenda, but there's pressure on us. We need to be able to obviously come up with the right colleagues and professionals to be able to participate in the boardroom discussions. We need, as a collective, to obviously look at voicing out these conflict of interest issues that have been highlighted. It has to come from us. Nobody's going to do it. We, as a fraternity, need to be able to talk to the right people and raise our voice, have a mindset shift in terms of the value that we add to society. You have no idea the power you have, but the sad reality is you are not exercising it. You are powerful. And it's about time you rise up to that challenge. And the only way you do that is through knowledge and skills. Be part of, I'm sure most of you are part of SIPS, I hope. But if not, you should be, because that's the de facto professional organization for procurement. We need to start working together and raising our voice so that there could be collective mindset shift. It can't just be me alone. I've done my bit. Since 2007, over 250 of colleagues, some of which in this room, have gone through my mentorship to do a master's. I did it not being paid, because I believe that we need to build a future for the African child. You can also do the same and mentor the youth that are coming through. We need more than 250. We need 50,000 at least in the next 10 years, procurement professionals in Africa. Otherwise, we'll be going around in circles. But they are not there. And this is where you have a role to play. There's been a second calling for us. This is it. If we miss it, it has to come in another generation. The academia side is also looking at changing their content because it's more purchasing focused rather than procurement focused. And hopefully with time, that will also help with the skills development. Now, these are the structures that are evolving rapidly. Before, you had the chief procurement officer or purchasing officer reporting into the CFO. And then you had the chief operating officer with logistics and operations. Now it's being collapsed. You have the chief supply chain officer taking care of logistics, operations, and procurement. These things do still apply in the educational establishment, colleagues. It does. You just have to place the CEO with the VC or the dean of a business school. In places like Ghana, I've seen a sudden shift. The CPO reports directly to the vice chancellor because they are beginning to see how they can leverage the spend of the university. But they are not going to invite you if you are still a paper pusher, a purchasing, you have a purchasing mindset. No, they want more than that. Now, what is expected from a chief supply chain officer? Obviously, you need to really be very broad-minded in terms of your thinking. You have to look at things from a different perspective because you are part of the local economic development, not growth. How you develop locally, how you help your shareholders protect their wealth, how you improve bottom line performance. It's definitely going to be, supply chain management is going to be the core for, obviously, integrated organizational improvement and shareholder wealth creation. Without a doubt, it's been proven, and it's going to happen. In the educational establishment, do you have value to add? Yes. The door has been opened. How many minutes have I got? 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. Oh, thank you. The door has been opened for us. And we need to rise up to that challenge. Before it was closed. Between 2009 and 2013, it was closed. Now it's been opened, and we need to really grab this opportunity. There's been a dramatic shift because of the role we have to play, colleagues, in terms of government achieving its objective, and the private sector also creating value for their shareholders. It's critical that we look at procurement from SMME development perspective, because that's the engine. SA Breweries doesn't create jobs. Tiger Brands doesn't create jobs. The engine of every successful economy are the SMMEs. Go to Germany, go to UK, the United States, it's the SMMEs. And for SMMEs to develop and grow, the trigger is procurement. So you have a power to change South Africa and the rest of the continent. These are some of the straight talk from CEOs that I met. One classic one was the CPOs. They don't really add meaningful strategic input. They come with a whole host of data to share with us, and we fall asleep. We want strategic thinking, not data. We know operational issues will be dealt with, but we want new innovative ideas. Where is it coming from? Yourselves. They see a lot of us who are able to do the transformation becoming part of the ESCO within 12 months. It's happening already. But are you ready? One minister said coordinated procurement and supply chain prices can reduce regional poverty. It is true. I don't see the reason why there could not be strategic sourcing between universities in South Africa and also universities in Namibia. Why should the region be paying different prices for printers? You can strategically source. For books, healthcare, Panadol is Panadol whether you are in Timbuktu or you are in Mzimkulu. But we all pay different prices. When it comes to the United States, they leverage their spend. They go and buy as United States. When it comes to Africa, Lesotho will go and try and negotiate. There are more people in Soweto than in Lesotho. How do you leverage your spend? These are some of the innovative ideas the government is looking for. What are the critical success factors? For me, it has to be long-term focused. We can't fix this issue overnight. There are still too many practitioners and not professionals. You can be a practitioner, but not a professional. And we need to have more professionals than practitioners. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can end up being in procurement. You know, I've seen some of my colleagues reporting into catering. They call themselves CPO, Chief Procurement Officer, but you are reporting into a catering manager. And I said, but where is the chief then? You might as well be a buyer because you're not the Chief Procurement Officer. We like titles, but underneath it is nothing. And we've got to change that. You can't just get up tomorrow and say, I'm going to be a lawyer, can you? No. You can't just get up tomorrow and say, I'm going to be the Chief Financial Officer. So why do we allow it to happen in our profession? If you go to a doctor, you're not well, and then doctor said, I was a lawyer before and today I'm a doctor. Would you take the medication? This is exactly why the CEOs don't take it serious. We need to be bold. I listened to Minister Masima, and he made a very interesting comment that National Treasury is not in the space of transformation, but in the space of public purse. It's true. They manage the public purse, but not in the business of transformation. He's right. In conclusion, colleagues, we are back on the agenda, and it's up to us to take it. But let's be realistic and do serious introspection. Not all of us will make it to the C-suite. There's nothing wrong with that. We just need to be careful and know what our capabilities are, and then decide the next steps. Future looks good. I believe the profession has come out of age. We just need to try and grasp this opportunity, because if it goes, it will take a long time for it to come back. I thank you for your time, and may God bless you. The presentation, you can download it, is on the Panaverse website. You can go and download it and obviously further consider it. Stay blessed. Thank you.